Well, it's time to begin with another exciting webinar. It's a great afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. If names give any indication, human resource departments are not a favorite for many. HR working hard and exceeding your low expectations is one of many that can be found online. The department is often pictured as dull, ineffective, and getting in the way of employees. Until recently, a change in mindset and opening doors to innovators, all of this is about to change, and HR can finally serve its true purpose to make employees happy. HR Association of India welcomes you all to the 2020 Dialogue Masterclass series on the topic HR Inside the Ring. For HRAI events and details, I would request all our participants to visit the link shared in the chat window. Do follow the webinar guidelines as mentioned in the chat window. Kindly help us with your feedback. It is important to us. We will be running a poll before the Q&A session. Request all participants to kindly give your feedback on the session. Our today's speaker is a friend of HRAI, and he is just a call away when we need his fresh perspective. HRAI members continue talking about him weeks after his session is over. One of the primary reasons is because he talks about what matters and what many would shy away from. He takes the bull by its horn, and at the end of the bullfight, you would see both of them enjoying the meal together under the beautiful stars. The topic is unique, quite different, and thought-provoking. I have the pleasure to introduce a double graduate in management and law, a double postgraduate in HR and marketing. He's a certified MBTI and NLP practitioner. Being a certified design thinker, he loves flirting with ideas as he designed prototypes. A regular columnist in leading HR magazine, his thought leadership under the name #HRBytes goes viral on LinkedIn within a few moments of his posting. He currently serves as a Senior Associate Director, HR at KPMG and is renowned visiting faculty at various IIMs and IIT across the country. He truly believes you really get what you got when others get what you got. He is none other than Mr. Sahil Nayar. Do feel free to follow him on LinkedIn. Details for the same are shared in the chat window. Sit back and enjoy as the beautiful behavioral scientist casts his spell. Over to you, Sahil.
All right. Very, very good afternoon, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be with each one of you here today. Peterson, thank you so much for the kind words. I just hope I live up to them as we spend the next 45 minutes together with all the wonderful members of HRAI. So ladies and gentlemen, like a typical consultant, a couple of disclaimers before we get started. You would have seen the series of masterclasses that HRAI is running in your entire career. You would have attended a lot of such seminars, webinars, conferences. But what I do assure you is this one's going to be different. And the reason why this one's going to be different is because you, each one of you, are going to be in the center stage of what we're going to be discussing. Each one of you would have experienced some form or shape of either being in the ring, around the ring, or sitting in the audience enjoying while people were inside the ring. My only ask of each one of you is to be extremely participative in this session. Use the chat, put in questions there, put in your comments as we make this very, very interactive. And with that disclaimer, none of the caselets or none of the situations have any correlation to any person living or dead. And therefore, do take it in a pinch of salt as you actually experience them and look back for similar characters in your organizations, previous organizations, or even people that you've interacted with through your careers. With that, I have absolute pleasure presenting to you Getting Inside the Ring, the 2020 Dialogue series from HRAI. Peter, let's move to the next slide, please. Okay, so what do we have in store for you? Of course, we have a lot of stuff that's going to be entertaining, like I promised, a lot of stuff that's going to be engaging. But more importantly, what's all the fun if we don't have some takeaways? So in the space of HR, Peter started off by saying the function has been suffering a credibility crisis for the longest time. How much of it is for us to blame and how much of it is for us to prove? We'll figure out in the next 45 minutes. But needless to say, it's not a function about dealing with the black and white. It's not a balance sheet where you know what gets into the asset side and what gets into the liability side if you just know the golden rules of accounting. It's way beyond that, because in one moment when you can treat your talent like the asset, the next moment when the situation becomes difficult, you treat them like liabilities and you ask them to leave. On one hand, you call it a family culture, and on the other hand, you just sack people with no man's business. You don't do that in a family. We're going to explore all of these nuances of understanding and learning to play with the gray. Of course, there was a time when our fathers and forefathers used to choose between a right and a wrong. Very simple. बच्चा ये ठीक है, ये गलत है, गलत मत करो, सही के रास्ते पे चलो. But of course, the world has moved on since then, and we really now need to choose between two rights, or for that matter, even choose between two wrongs. And therefore, how do we make those choices? It's very, very easy to play popular. It's very nice. It feels very good. But how do you bloody stick your neck out when it hurts the most? Because playing right is more important than playing popular. And in the process of playing right, each one of us will be faced with a lot of ethical dilemmas. And how do we really deal with those? Of course, I'm going to pick the analogy of being in the ring. And therefore, how do you really manage diversity in HR? And most importantly, how do you be a purposeful HR professional? So if you are with me so far, tell me on the chat, is HR the lady or is HR the guy? Don't tell me they're proposing one another, that's obvious. But tell me, who is HR here? Do roles reverse. If you're with me, each one of you, it's going to be a power-packed session, and therefore use the chat window and tell me, according to you, no right or wrong answers. We'll figure out what's right, what's wrong. But who is HR here? Is HR the lady or is HR the guy? Or a third answer, let your imagination go outside the ring. All right, we'll give it another 10 seconds as responses come on the chat. Okay, Sapna says man is the HR. Aditi says guy. All right. What about the others? Raghavendra, HR is the guy. Sham goes on to saying John. Okay, Padmini, the man. All right. So let's figure out in this world who is the man. And does the man have a feminist side or does the woman has a masculine side? We'll figure all of that out in the next 45 minutes as we are with you. Let's move on to the next one and deep dive into our first case study. And my question to each one of you, please use the chat. I'll be happy if, Peter, we can unmute a couple of people and they can also voice their points, because it'd be fantastic to really do this live and interactive. So ladies and gentlemen, the hands are on the ropes. And the question before us is HR always black and white? Let's hear some responses firing in. As I told you, it's going to be not at all prescriptive. It's not going to be authoritative. No, it's not. Fantastic. No, it's not. Okay. No, 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 no. Anyone saying yes? Probably not. Okay, Gunjan, thank you for that. Tushar, no. Vikas, not often. All right. Great. So let me ask you guys some more questions. And this is a very, very simple one, because we're going to start very simple and slowly we will keep raising the bar. The question to you guys is, tell me one of the easiest decisions that you had to ever make in your life or your career. I'll repeat, one of the easiest decisions you had to ever make in your career or your life. Yes, let's hear it up. Food, fantastic. Okay, what to eat, what not to eat. Aruna says food. Okay. Easiest decisions, guys. Very easy. You're starting with easy, we'll go to tough in a while. What are the easiest decisions you made? Wake up early. Okay. I thought that was a tough decision. Okay. Sapna says it's the easiest decision she's ever made is to be an HR person. Okay, fantastic. Many of us on this call would be here by design, some by default. Okay, let's hear the others. We have a lot of people on the call. Let's hear the others. What has been the easiest decision? Ritesh says, keep learning. Absolutely, Ritesh. Bang on. Keep learning has been important, but yet an easy decision. Great. Let's flip it across. What have been some of the toughest decisions that you've taken? What's been some of the toughest decisions? Okay, every day is class. Parvati, I can relate to that. And class on Zoom is even more difficult. I know that. Especially when your students don't come on video, it's like you're talking to a wall. So you can imagine if for a student, if it's difficult, you can imagine how difficult it is for the professor. All right, what else? What's the toughest decision you've taken? Evaluating growth opportunities. There comes the mastermind. All right, maintaining discipline and code of conduct. All right. What else has been the toughest decision you've ever taken? Anyone else? Make others to listen. Bang on, Aruna. It's so difficult, right? People carry their own perceptions, their own thought processes, influencing others. Ritesh, corporate experience, letting people go. Yeah, very difficult decision. Very difficult. Having to let go of folks. Absolutely. Pleasing people is difficult. Bang on. Yeah, very true. Very true. All of you are giving all the right answers. To start my own shop, yes, Aditi, not easy. The entrepreneurial bug bites a lot of people, but sustaining it and building your startup to be an organization of the future of work is not easy. Gunjan, continue your hobby with job. Of course, not easy. Now come to the space of HR, guys. If HR is not always black and white, HR, of course, has its shades of gray. I'm not saying 50 shades of gray, maybe even 100, but HR has its shades of gray. And as HR has its shades of gray, how do we really figure out and understand? Do we really take a black or a white knockout? Do we take a shade of gray? How do we make those decisions? Because to my mind, the easiest decision is to follow what we are told to do. And this can be either from our seniors, this can be either from our business stakeholders, this could be from an alternate perspective from a peer or a fellow colleague. But the toughest decision is not to follow when you don't believe in something. And because each one of us have our own individuality and each one of us have a mind of our own, how many times do we make a very easy decision, which is to follow the crowd, a difficult decision for ourselves because we don't believe in it? And let me take a classic case of an employee who has actually had an integrity issue. And we all face this in our roles in various forms or shapes in our organizations. And therefore, when you have an employee who has been caught on the wrong side of an integrity issue, what would you essentially do? Would you ask the person to leave? Give me a yes or no on the chat. You've got an employee on the wrong side of an integrity issue. Would you ask the person to leave or would you do something else? What would you do as HR? Yeah, I have the chat open in front of me. Leave. Okay. What else would you do? Counsel. Fantastic, Aruna. Okay. Counseling says Sapna. Speak to that employee. Peterson. Absolutely. You would speak to that employee. Fantastic. Can do a discussion, investigate, counsel, give him a chance with proper guidance. Now, do you see what fantastic responses are coming from each one of you? Each one of you HR professionals in your own right with your own experiences, but 5 or 6 different responses. And therefore, while asking the person to leave may be the last resort, are we convinced that we've heard both sides of the story? Are we convinced that we've given the person a fair chance? Are we convinced that the person accepts his or her mistake and is guilty? Or is it just someone trying to play foul? And these are some of the most important aspects that we as independent HR need to really play. And that's what I call navigating through the gray. Peter, let's move to the next slide, please. And in this process of navigating through the gray, how do we really experience nuanced decision making? How do we really look at an individualistic point of view versus the collective point of view? As many of you all rightly said, in this process of asking the individual to leave, are we really applying judgment to analysis? And like Sachin Kumar says, compliance to statutory provisions and welfare work. Of course, with the whole IR space, are we looking at labor laws? Are we looking at what does it tantamount to really make someone jobless? What's the pulse on the ground? And more importantly, a question that each one of us as HR need to answer. Whose voice are we? And the reason why I use the word you there is because I want you to feel it, feel that pinch, feel that coming right there in front of you to say, whose voice are you? Are you the management's voice or are you the employee's voice? I'm going to put this up very, very quickly on the chat. Why don't you go out and tell me, in your roles as HR, whose voice are you generally? Are you the management's voice or are you the employee's voice? Yes, I like it, Aruna. We're saying both. Absolutely. It's not management or employee, it's management and employee. Yes, Peter, let's move on. And as we come to some of this and you see these pictures out there, and of course the scroll right in the bottom is hidden and you won't be able to read the lines that are mentioned there. But as I said earlier, can you really choose between a right or a wrong? Everyone, can you give me an example of choosing a right or a wrong? Give me one right that you have to choose or one wrong that you have to say no to in an HR context or an organization context. Thanks, Gunchan, for that response. I love the way you guys are participating in this masterclass. Give me one example where you believe it's the right thing to do. Any example in your career. What's the right thing to do? I'm keenly looking forward to the chat. I know we've caught you guys off the ring, but we're going to throw you in the ring and collectively we're going to get a lot of ideas coming up. So just repeating the question once again, what according to you is the right thing to do? Any example in your corporate world? The rule is very simple. We will not move ahead till we don't get a response because we're going to make it absolutely participative. Maybe smart recruiting. Okay, good try. Support the deserving candidate. Absolutely. Aruna, you've touched a brilliant point. Support the deserving candidate. And if I were to just put this example, what's the wrong thing to do? What's the wrong thing? Supporting what kind of candidate would be the wrong thing to do? How many times do we really hire with a certain bias in our mind? How many times do we hire saying, oh, this guy is from my college, or this guy is from my MBA school, and therefore I will hire him or her from there because people from this college are brilliant. Why? Because very subtly, I am from that college, and if I am brilliant, the rest are brilliant as well. Absolutely, absolutely. Choosing performance over values. Do not allow him to do any mistakes. Absolutely. And therefore, the consideration that needs to be on our mind between choosing between two rights is don't hire for bias. Would you look at affordability? Would you look at retention? Would you look at an organization in terms of what would be the culture fit? And would you look at a person whether it's my institute versus not being from my institute? And some of these factors become extremely critical because choosing between a right or a wrong was very easy. Now we need to choose between two rights or maybe two wrongs. Like we looked at the whole pandemic. Of course, many people would have come back saying we need to downsize, we need to ask employees to leave. As HR, have we really pushed back to say, maybe that's not the best of things to do. Can we look at other opportunities where we can reduce cost? Are we spending, obviously travel has cut down, hotel expenses have cut down, other expenses have cut down. Can we look at some OPEX expenses? Can we look at some of our other expenses where we can cut down to save on cost? And the last thing that we should touch upon is effectively employee cost. As we move on, I want to talk to you about two very important aspects on the next slide, which is to do with passion and compassion. Peter, if you can move on to the next slide, please. Now here, look at this image, and we'll keep coming back to the ring, right? A classic case of an individual who's extremely strong, extremely powerful. He has two options. He can knock the guy down and kill him to death and win. Or he can knock the guy down, bruise him enough so that he doesn't get up again to kill him back and still win. If you were the tall guy out there, what would you do? Would you kill your opponent, let him die and win? Or would you bruise him so badly that he doesn't get up and still win? Or would you just bruise him reasonably enough? Maybe he could get back up and kill you. Three options. What would you choose? What would you choose? Third, okay? So Vikas is playing fair. You'll say, I'll give him a tight knock. But maybe if he gets up and gives me a knock back, I'll handle it there. Gunjan says, second option, I won't let him get up. Okay. Bruise him hard enough. Second option. Okay. Anyone wants to take the first option? Kill him. Kill him forever. Just kill him. Don't just bruise him. Just kill him. Anyone? No. Okay, great. So we're all compassionate people out there. But in the process of being compassionate, do you really sacrifice your passion? And this happens many a times to many of us. Because when we're extremely passionate about something and the aspect of compassion comes in, we actually take the middle ground, which is what most of you have done. Because if you don't kill that guy out there, will that guy stand up and kill you back? Or will you bruise him enough that he just can't have the energy to get up? And these are some answers which I'm not prescribing, but I'm leaving to you to sit back and reflect as analogies in your space as HR of what would you like to do and how would you like to do. Because the classic case of what our government was faced with a couple of months back. They obviously got down into lockdown very quickly and had a sustained lockdown. And then, like a lot of other people went around saying that there was great employee engagement that happened with the Tali and the Thali, and then the light show that happened. We all remember those days. But the intent was to actually save lives. Till we reached a point that people couldn't sit at home anymore. And then when as unlock 1, unlock 2, unlock 3, unlock 4 happened, the focus moved to livelihood so that people can actually go out and earn their daily bread. The question before all of us is, as HR, what would we have done? Because that is where it plays a significant role. Do we really look at business plans? Do we hire for bias? Do we make offers during this time to a lot of people and then revoke offers? And therefore, my question, and I said I'm going to keep it very interactive, my question to each one of you, you're the HR, you have made offers to candidates pre-corona, corona hits us, now is the time to onboard those candidates. The easiest thing to do is to revoke the offer. What are the other opportunities you have? What else can you do instead of revoking an offer? Because that individual is waiting and looking forward to join you. So if your management comes up to you and says, okay, listen, revoke 25 offers, and you say, no, I don't think that's the best thing to do. What are the alternates that you have that you can present before your business leader? Let's hear it on the chat, guys. What are the opportunities? Because if revoking is not the only answer, what are the other possible answers? Peter, can people also unmute themselves by themselves? Or
yes, they can.
They can, right?
Yes, yes, they can.
Oh, fantastic. So then wait, why don't we get some people on video or audio? Why don't you unmute yourself and tell us if you have to revoke offers and that's not the one you want to go with, what are the other ones? Fantastic. Because our talent acquisition expert says postpone the date of joining. I'll assume that's the point. Defer offers. Okay. Part-time models, contractual engagement, postpone offers. Sachin is saying cut expenditure, fair. Sachin, let's focus only on the offers. Great point on energy, great point on cost-cutting techniques, but let's focus on the offers. So one is postpone, one is defer, one is part-time models, one is contractual engagement. What else? We can ask them to work with partial pay. Okay, Gunjan, great. Rework compensation. Fantastic, Ritesh. Ritesh, can I invite you to unmute yourself and talk a little bit more on reworking compensation? What do you mean by that?
Well, thanks, Sahil. I think what I mean by that is a lot of times a company would want to revoke an offer because they would have lost a project or a client, or they wouldn't have the right amount of liquid money at that point in time. But to honor an offer, maybe they can have a discussion with the candidate and understand what they've promised can be maybe given to them after a period of time, and rework the whole compensation structure that they have. So they end up having the candidate on board. However, the compensation agreement they would have had can be reworked to which is more win-win situation for both the candidate and the organization, and fit both the expenditures at the cost end and the livelihood of the employee end, and move ahead with that.
Lovely.
And they,
Beautiful.
yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thanks so much, Ritesh. I think so you've really explained it very well to say a project on hold, something else has happened. Instead of having no job, can you look at a reworked compensation and then step it up as business moves up? Fantastic. Parvati, keep offer on hold, fair point, but question is for how long, right? Because you're creating great amount of anxiety in people's minds. They don't know whether you're finally going to honor the offer or not. Sachin, same point as Ritesh. Thank you so much. I'm also thinking, guys, apart from all the lovely points that you made, as HR, we have visibility to a lot of open positions. We have visibility to a lot of functions within the organization, some that may be growing very fast, some may not be. Can you repurpose? Can you look at a role gig? Can you look at someone playing with the same skill sets, an opportunity in a different department or a different role where you are growing, where you need more people? And therefore, realignment within the organization is another way that you can. I'm so happy that each one of you have actually thought through this on the fly, because these are possible options that we should definitely consider instead of just towing the line of saying we will revoke offers. And yesterday, HREI had a session on the process of influencing. Once you have these ideas, how do you really use the tools and techniques to influence the right stakeholders to take some of these decisions that are backed by data, by facts? He's actually getting into the ring. He's actually giving that knock, but at the same time, not killing the person out, but telling the person, listen, you have an opportunity to hit back. And as Vikas pointed out earlier on, I'll take option number 3, to really kick back. And when times are better, I will bounce back and then let the best person win. Fantastic. Peter, let's move on. Now, from passion to compassion, to really sticking your neck out when it hurts the most. And I think this is an area where I'm generalizing, but I think we have a lot to do as a fraternity. As a fraternity, we really need to stick our neck out when it hurts the most. And many a times we don't end up doing it because we're scared we'll fall flat on our face. Fall flat on our face because of either competence, fall flat on our face either because of lack of data, fall flat on our face either because we're not quite sure whether we understand the business as well as the business guy understands it. And therefore, if you're recommending some of these, are we just recommending as an independent point of view, or are we recommending it sitting inside the ring to say, I know you are bloody a couple of feet taller than me. I know you're aggressive. I know these are your inches of your abs. I know this is the kind of strength that you have, but you don't know what I'm talking because I understand people better than you do. I'm qualified to understand people better than you do. and my advice will work wonders provided we implement it. And then how do you really co-create this with the business to say all in and let's start with love all? Because that's exactly where you stick your neck out, because that's exactly where you make a difference. Now, all of this that I said in the last 45 seconds may appear like gyan to you. Let me give you a corporate example. Let's say you're running your year-end performance management exercise in your organization. You have a top performer who's been a top performer for the last 3 years. And in this year, the individual has got an average rating. Of course, the role that the individual plays is not very tangible, and therefore you don't have metrics, very, very defined metrics to measure. You may have goals that are set. You will have assessment of those goals, but are they tangible metrics like in a sales job? What are the sales numbers? Not necessarily. It's more of a softer back-end job. Now, in this situation, you go back to your business leader and you say, I have an observation. I have seen that this person has been a top performer for the last 3-4 years. Sorry. And now he's an average lower bottom performer. Why do you think so? What's the rationale? And the business leader gives you some examples, gives you a little bit of here and there. What would you do to push back to ensure that this person gets a top rating if he's not being treated fairly, or that there is a negative bias, or there is a change in chemistry or equation between him and his boss because of which his rating is downgraded? As HR, what would you do? It's all about sticking the neck out, but the question is, how will you go about doing it? That's where the devil is. Happy to hear from any one of you who like to unmute themselves. It's a very important question. So maybe you spend a couple of minutes on this one. Yes, guys. What would you do and how would you go about doing it? I'll repeat it very quickly. Performance management year-end exercise, top performer for the last 2-3 years. This year, the rating has been downgraded. You have an exploratory conversation. The business leader tells you the guy is not performing well. He's been out of form. Some kind of answer here and there. But you're very clear. You have a hinge. And maybe it's got to do with the chemistry of him and his boss. And because of that, he's not being treated fairly. And in spite of all his hard work and efforts, he's not being rewarded with a good rating. What would you do as HR? Send for training, counseling, okay. Will you send the individual or his boss for training and counseling? Sachin. Okay, let's look at some more responses. Rework his personal goals, with his professional goals, requires reprioritization. All right. What else? What else will we do? Will we even question it or we'll let it go? We've asked the question, the business leader has said, fine, guy's not performing. Would you really stick your neck out? Would you say, it's okay, just another employee, what's the big deal? Ritesh, right? Expectation realignment, all right? What else, guys? Understand the real cause of poor performance. Absolutely, Tushar. Brilliant. Parvati takes the stronger one, 3 months time to perform, training, look at professional journey last 1 year, do some analysis. Vikas says needs a deeper check to ascertain why the dip, a frank conversation with artifacts of the manager. Relook into it. Ask the boss to look at the entire situation from a third perspective. Goals have changed, sometime along with target revision. Absolutely. Bang on, bang on. The question is, while you guys have given all the right answers, how many times do we sit and do this? And when we are convinced that this individual deserves to get a good rating, how many times do we put our neck out and say, this person has to get it, and fight for the employee? Because isn't that what our job is? Isn't that what we are as advocates of doing the right thing? We're not supposed to take decisions for business leaders. That's their job. They will take business decisions. Our job is to facilitate taking the right decision. And whenever they're hiding something in their closets. How do you really bring that out so that you're perceived as independent? Because as HR, you may be low on competence, that's okay. But if you're not independent, I don't think you're a true HR. And that's my personal view out there, right? And therefore, it's extremely independent. It's extremely important to be independent. And irrespective of whether it is management or employee, how do we be the mirror and strike our neck out when it hurts the most? Let's move on next, Peter. Really look at another classic case of succession planning here. And here the example is slightly different. Here the example is all about saying, there is a business leader, of course, could have a certain bias. You have the pulse on the floor. He has two of his direct reports who are contending to take his position in a talent review. One of them is extremely aggressive and has very high attrition in his team. And the other one is conservative, but is a top performer. These are the two people, and their personas are very clear. One is aggressive, but has high attrition because people who work with him find him extremely aggressive. And the other one is conservative and a top performer. People like him, he's popular. He also does the right thing. Now, the business leader very clearly wants the aggressive one to be his successor. And you as HR, and HR always wanting a place at the table, has the place at the table and is asked for your independent point of view. Should person A, who is the aggressive one, should he be the successor, or should the one who is conservative be the successor? Who would you choose and why? Obviously, information is limited. It's a hypothetical case study. But if you had to choose one between the two, who would you choose and why? The bottom line here is the business leader wants the aggressive one to be his successor. Who would you choose and why? Yes, let's hear it, people. Who would you choose and why? Okay, you're saying B because B upholds the values first. Okay, brilliant. What else? Who would you choose and why? Any other responses, guys? Who would we choose and why? The question here is not about agreeing or disagreeing with the business leader. The question here is aggressiveness leading to attrition, top performer, conservative, at the same time, top performer. And therefore, you're saying B, Tushar, because he's connected to the people on the floor. Aditi is saying B because aggressiveness not always helps. Fantastic. See, when you have limited information like this, guys, it's extremely important to solicit more information. What are the metrics? What's the role? Is the person ready for the role? Is the person aligned to the values? Is the person doing the right thing? Is the person fitting into the expectations of the role? Because ultimately, if the person fails, it's going to be a collective failure for everyone. And therefore, asking these questions without policing, but being curious and being able to ask these questions and then having an independent point of view is extremely important, because then you're playing right, you're not necessarily playing popular. And as we move to the last segment of this session, and I wanted to reserve some time for Q&A, and Peter, we move to the next slide, please. We're going to be talking here about diversity. I'm going to be extremely sensitive as I talk to you through this slide, because I want you to sit back and reflect of a moment where a large conglomerate is hiring a person for an IR role in their factory. Would it make sense to take a safe stand and hire a male candidate for the IR role? Because you know what? It might be difficult for a woman to hire and actually manage a very agitated union. Now think of this as diversity, and does diversity really matter? If that's the lens the hiring manager has, Is it really the best lens? Are you really hiring for skill, or are you hiring with a certain bias in mind? And therefore, could you really have a situation where a brilliant woman candidate who's applied based on her skill could be the one who's winning the game, as compared to someone who just has gender and therefore the preconceived mindset to say, oh my God, this guy can handle an agitated union better. And some of these things that we experience as custodians of the process, how do we stand as brand ambassadors to really go out there to say, while the whole focus of progressive organizations may be on LGBTIQ, even the basic rudimentary stuff on gender bias needs to get eliminated, and we need to be the flag bearers for those. And I think that is extremely important. And with that, I'm going to come to my last slide, which is the finale. And then I'm going to open it up for a great interaction with each one of you. The intent was to get you into a reflective mode. The intent was you to sit back and think of moments in your life when you've encountered such situations. But most importantly, as you get to the finale, you really have to win in the workplace before you win in the marketplace. Because in this whole world of so many award ceremonies happening and so many HR awards won by so many HR people, the question that should never come and hit you is to say, oh, did this person win that award? Oh, was that award conferred on the person because he knows this person? And those are questions that should never be asked. And therefore, whether it be an individual or it be an organization, the moment you win in the workplace first, your employees will go out and help you win in the marketplace. But if you end up winning in the marketplace first, you may have many people sit back at the workplace and say, oh, we won this award, we didn't even know about it. And that is what we call as building an EVP, building your proposition so tight that every single employee of your organization is your brand ambassador. And with that, I just wanted to conclude and open it up for a little bit of interaction with each one of you. I know very limited time of 1 hour, and I've tried to stick to 45 minutes as I've left you with some of these examples of being in the ring. But my only takeaway from a session like this would be, it's extremely easy to sit in the crowd, to look at your mobile phone, to cheer, to go quiet, to put a bet. But it's extremely difficult to get into the ring and take on a culture, get into the ring and take on a mindset, get in the ring and take on status quo. But the question is, were you born for that? Or were you born to just sit in the audience, sit back and enjoy while someone is roughing it out because they believe in what they do? With that, I'd like to thank HRI, thank HRAI, thank all the people who've joined in this session. And Peter, back to you while we open it up to a Q&A.
Thank you so much, Sahil. Before we move into the Q&A session, would request all our participants to kindly share their feedback on our today's session. We'll be running a poll. I request you all to give your feedback out here. So while we are doing so, would request all of you all to kindly share your questions on our today's session in the chat window so that we can have them addressed. Thank you all for sharing your feedback. Would request all of you all to share your questions in the chat box so that we can have them addressed.
Guys, it doesn't necessarily need to even be a question. It could just be an experience that you guys have had, something that resonated with you as you heard me speak, something that you experienced in your organization or previous organizations that have really kept you at a crossroads or a dilemma. It'll be a great learning opportunity for all of us. Because all that we discussed today was nothing new. But what it definitely was relevant to what is happening in the world today. It is relevant to our current market situation. It is relevant to our current existence. It is relevant to our decision-making ability, our credibility as a function, our ability to influence, our ability to take the right decisions, our ability to aid business leaders to take the right decisions, and ultimately build an organization that is truly a best place to work. So all of us are in this together. Happy to hear your perspective as well.
So Sahil, we have questions that are coming in. We have the first one from Parvati. So you'd be taking them directly?
Sure.
To deal with non-performer, lazy, but very much faithful.
Fantastic. Parvati, very good question. Let me ask you, right, because it's such a beautiful question. Let me ask you, what is the definition of faithful? Is it loyal? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, he's loyal.
Yeah.
And he's very obedient and is a very good listener, but little lazy and not all that good performer kind of person. So how to deal with such a person?
So Parvati, go back to what we studied in our MBA days, the whole skill will matrix.
Yeah.
And the answer just lies there, because if someone's obedient, if someone is loyal, if someone has been with me, but if he's just added luggage on the bus, and I'm sorry, I'm being very direct and candid about it, but if the person's just added luggage on the bus, how long do you want to carry that luggage? Do you need yes men around you? If you need yes men around you and obedient people around you to say, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir, and that's the culture you want to bring, of course, pay him a couple of lakh rupees for him to say yes. He will enjoy doing it. You will enjoy listening to the yes. He'll massage your ego. Enjoy your trip. But if you need talented people, competent people, I don't think so there's any place for aggregators in this world. I don't think so there's any place for lazy people and for people who are non-performers. So the skill definitely needs to move up. It can move up either by the individual or the organization enabling it. But if the will issue continues to remain, I'm not quite sure what kind of organization would want to have such people. What you should definitely do if you're in a position to influence, you should try and ascertain why is the individual being lazy? Why is the individual not performing? Is there a skill issue? Ramp up the skill. If it is a will issue and the person is demotivated, figure that out. But if it is none of those, then you really need to figure out, do you really need the person on the team or not?
Sir, he is a sugar patient.
Okay, so then here is the aspect of compassion, right? The person may be a sugar patient, the person may be on diabetes. You would definitely want to support an individual like that. The person has been with you for a couple of years, going through a bad phase in his or her life. Definitely support the individual. But if the person is not going to contribute, it's going to be a challenge. If the intent of the person is to say, my illness or my disease supersedes my intent to work, honestly speaking, I would not exhibit compassion. I would say take 6 months out, take leave, get your health in order. There are people who are people with disability who show great amount of passion. There are people who have organs that have been compromised who show great amount of passion. There are people who have insecurities, people who have major broken relationships, and they fight back and they are brilliant in their work. So if you just have sugar, I think that's a very easy thing to handle.
True, sir. True, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for asking that question and being the first one to open the series, Parvati.
Yeah, so we have the next question from Gunjan. What an HR person should do if he has been only asked to follow the management decision, even as per HR, it's not right.
Yeah, so I think Gunjan, first question you need to ask is is it the organization that is doing it or are you doing it to yourself? What do I mean by that? If the management believes that HR is only good enough to execute orders, the management will only give orders. But the day the management believes that HR can influence decision making or contribute to decision making, I have not seen one single business leader who has not involved HR. Why would someone not involve, right? Tell me, if you are a business leader and I ask you that this is a people-related issue, let your HR head decide. Of course, he may not let him or her decide completely, but he will definitely take his or her view or opinion or perspective. Now, if the person is not coming in to take that perspective, view, or opinion, either there is a huge mistrust, there is great amount of credibility deficit, and therefore that's not happening. And if it is happening, slowly and steadily, how do you increase your inroads into helping business leaders take people-related decisions? And as you do that, over a period of time, it's a journey. It's not a one-day affair. It's a journey, and you'll be able to get there surely but surely.
Yes, so our next question is from Vikas. My experience says that the value of HR at the workplace is directly related to that of the HR head. The stronger, the later, the higher the value. What do you have to say about that?
No, because bang on, yeah, I think so. You said it right. The tone starts at the top. So if you have a weakling sitting right at the top who is a yes man, I am not sure how much of the power or how much of the authority or how much of the credibility is going to cascade down to the team. We see a lot of HR heads and CHROs carry their resignation letter in their pocket, but that's again another extreme. I think what we need to really find is where do you really draw your power and authority from? That is most important. And most important above all is how are you creating value on a day-to-day basis? Because when you're creating value, credibility will automatically build itself and follow suit. So these are my 2 or 3 thoughts, Vikas, because at the end of the day, the value of HR at the workplace is directly linked not just to the HR head, but an HR head being a figurehead is also linked to the competence of the larger HR team. Because let's accept it, the HR head will network with a certain level of people in the organization based on the size and scale of the organization, which is the top-down approach. There's also a bottom-up approach where your single junior-most HR colleague who is on the shop floor, who is on the client side, is actually creating those experiences for people, which will also move bottom-up. And as that happens, you will find the sweet spot where not just the HR head, who may be a very strong leader, but each individual HR team member will collectively shape the value that HR will create. I hope I've been able to do justice to your question, Vikas. Great, thank you.
So dear participants, any further questions that you all want to share out here, please do share in the chat box. We are happy to address that. We look forward to more questions from your side. Great. So thank you so much, Sahil. Wonderful insights and great example. Thank you for sharing and taking us through this beautiful journey. I'm sure our participants have had a great session full of learning. For those who are not able to join us today, they can access the slides and recordings available on YouTube. The link for the same has been shared in the chat window. Request all our participants to like and share these along with your colleagues and friends who may be interested. Before we conclude with our today's session, we would also want to thank all the association members, Geisha, LinkedIn Local, and NASCOM COE for supporting these HRAI events. To know more about these associations, request you to kindly visit the link provided in the chat window. Thank you once again, dear speaker and our participants, for joining us today. Do join us for our next masterclass on the topic, Building Emotional Resilience, on the 25th of November 2020 at 3 p.m. Do register for this event at the link mentioned in the chat window. Also to join the Dialogue 2020 WhatsApp chat group through the invite link shared in the chat window. That's it from our side today. See you soon. Stay safe, take care, and bye for now.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Should we end the session, Peter?
Yeah, thank you, Shyam. We may conclude with the session today.
Thank you.
Thank you.